Hello. I hope you're all safe and warm and keeping up with your classes and things. Today we're going to talk about chapter 1. This is what I would say to my class if we were having this class seated and, you know, in together and all that. This particular chapter, of course, like all first chapters, it does a bit of introducing terms. It talks about what's important to various aspects of critical thinking, and it goes through a bit about why it matters and how it works. And we're going to look at critical thinking, logic, empowerment, worldview, some objections and answers to um, critical thinking in general, how it works, claims and reasons, reasons and arguments, statements and arguments, how to find an argument, and then what to do when you have an argument. Okay. Please, please, please. There are two things that you need to remember very much about our terminology. Um, every discipline has a set of definitions and things that they go by. Justice, blood spatter, and all these other fun things that they do. Like I said, each discipline has its own set of vocabulary. Some of the vocabulary that we use in critical thinking and in logic have different meanings outside of that realm, which is very normal, right? It's important to remember, though, that these are the definitions we're going to be using. These are the definitions that are going to be part of our lives for the next, 4 months or so. And to be careful with them and remember that they're not your normal everyday definitions, okay? So one aspect of the way I do testing is we have a set of terms that are crucial from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. And I call those big words. And the big words will be on every test, all 4 of them. And we're going to add to the list as we go along. But these ones that you have on the first test are going to be on the second test and the third test and the 4th test. So figure the way this goes out very early, okay? When I say I want the official book definition, I want the official book definition copied from the book or copied from the glossary. Don't make stuff up. Don't ask Google, okay? The glossary of the e-text, if you go to that table of contents and go almost all the way to the bottom, there's a glossary. And it's like a little dictionary, but it's a dictionary that's specific to this particular book. Okay, so that's where I'm at. And I'm going to walk through these real quick, and then I'm going to talk to you about the chapter. Critical thinking, the systematic evaluation or formulation of beliefs or statements by rational standards. Okay? Logic is the study of good reasoning or inference and the rules that govern it. A worldview, he talks about this, Dr. Vaughn talks about this in chapter 1, but we get the complete definition on page 48, so in chapter 2. The worldview is a philosophy of life, a set of fundamental ideas that helps us make sense of a wide range of important issues in life. Okay? Statement. A statement is often also called a claim or a belief. He uses these interchangeably throughout the book, so just kind of keep that in mind. And an assertion that something is or is not the case. The big deal about a statement is that it can either be true or false. Okay, so you have to understand that part. One that people mess up all the time, an argument. Okay, argument also only has one E in it. A-R-G-U-M-E-N-T. That's how you spell it. Please do that correctly. It's a group of statements in which some of them, premises, are intended to support another of them, the conclusion. These words in the brackets are essential to the definition and essential to you earning full credit on the test. Okay? That's on page 10. So those are the big words from chapter 1, and one from chapter 2, but he talks about it twice, so, there we go. This particular chapter, like I said, is basically 3 parts. There's an introduction, and then there's why it matters and how it works. And one of the things he's done in this edition is to add this little 1.2, 1.1 to all of the sections like that. And it's helpful because the page numbers on the e-text are a little odd. And so this way I can say, oh, read sections 1.1 and 1.2. No big deal. Okay? So I'm just going to go down my notes and do stuff for you and talk about things, and you can have the stuff in the background and have your book if you want. So the power of critical thinking is one of the best, I think it's the best introduction to critical thinking and logic available out there. Dr. Vaughn he's wrote more textbooks. He has written more textbooks, but this one I think is probably the best one out there. So we know critical thinking is the systematic evaluation or formulation of beliefs or statements by rational standards. It's systematic because it involves distinct procedures and methods. It's evaluation and formulation because we're not just using it to assess existing beliefs, we're using it to make new ones, okay, that are also assessed and good, okay? And then it's by rational standards because beliefs are judged by how well they are supported by reasons, okay? Reasons, rational, same thing, okay? Elbert, lovely name, Hubbard says, the recipe for perpetual ignorance is this: be satisfied with your opinions and content with your knowledge. Now, on the one hand, you could say, well, yeah, I'm happy with what I know. I trust my opinions and things. Yes, but if you stop there, things are going to pass you by. Lots of things we're in this era of really quickly developing technologies and changes to our social world and digital world and all that. And it's difficult sometimes to remember that we don't have to do or like everything. So his thing is basically always search to find out more. Always look to learn more. Listen to a diverse amount of voices and opinions and look at credible authors and websites and things as much as you can. Okay, logic is also part of critical thinking. It's the study of good reasoning or inference and the rules that govern it. Okay? Critical thinking encompasses more than logic, though. It does incorporate logic, multiple types of logic even. It also is interested in the truth or falsity of statements, the evaluation of arguments and evidence, the use of analysis and investigation, the application of many other skills that help us decide what to believe or what to do. Okay, sounds like everything in life, right? Critical thinking leads us to knowledge, understanding, and empowerment. One of the things that Dr. Vaughn hits on nearly every chapter is unless you evaluate and understand your own beliefs, they're not really yours. Okay, so eventually critical thinking leads to having critical thinking ability leads to good problem solving, active learning, and intelligent self-improvement. You're not just going off doing what you want to do and doing what the next thing is. You actually get to kind of think about it. Okay. In section 1.1, this is page 5 in the book, why it matters. Okay, our lives are defined by our actions and choices, and our actions and choices are guided by our thinking. Okay, so our thinking had better be good. Do the work or follow the wind. Okay, when you follow the wind, You may not realize it right away, but you're giving up at least a measure of your personal freedom when you do that. Basically, again, your beliefs are yours only if you critically examine them for yourself to see if they're supported by good reasons. Most of us grow up in a household, have parents, family, we go to school, we go to church maybe, um, we have some sort of religious experiences there. But we're given a lot of information and we're given a lot of things that people say, do this, this is the right way to do this, this is the right way to be. And we have to discover for ourselves um, what those things actually mean and are they good and proper and credible things to believe in. Okay. So we get empowerment. Oh, sorry, backing up. Socrates, and we're going to do this as a discussion board. Um, Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, he had a specific context for that. His context is not our context. But he says this because he understands that unless you critically examine what you believe or what you're given to believe, um, it's not really your belief. Okay. Um, and we'll do some more from there. We get empowerment from critical thinking because critical thinking gives us skills for learning and exploring. Critical thinking is the common language of many worlds, and practicing it will help you make your way in them. So, critical thinking is present and involved in just about every discipline um, on the planet. Okay, so you have to think about how things work, what's the best road to take, um, what's the next best step in just about everything we do. I mean, you're talking about everything as simple as what am I having for breakfast to um, when should my partner and I have children? How should we live our lives? Where should we live? What work should we do? How do we, you know, how do we vote? How do we do? All those things come from critical thinking or a lack thereof. It's a defense against error, manipulation, and prejudice. Without some skill in moral reasoning, which is critical thinking applied to ethics, you risk making bad decisions about right and wrong, about good and bad. Tools for self-discovery, to discover what to believe, that is, to find out which claims are worthy of belief, you must weigh them in the balance of critical thinking. Ask always, what should I believe about this? Okay. This is the fundamental query at the heart of all of your conscious life choices. Okay. It's also, and this is something that is more and more important the longer we're on the planet, a way out of what we call the post-truth fog. Post-truth is relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal beliefs. If you have any doubt that this is where we are in history, come talk to me. We need to clear some things up, okay? So post-truth doesn't mean truth is dead, okay? It means that truth has less influence on public opinion than personal beliefs and appeals to emotion. So we'll just move on from there. To many people, facts are obstacles that get in the way of their preferred subjective beliefs. Post-truth blindness widens the gap between opposing sides, prevents intelligent discussion of issues, substitutes invective, which is calling people names and that kind of stuff, and dishonest polemics, dishonest stories, for rational arguments, and causes mistakes, misunderstanding, and confusion. However, the role of critical thinking does not change. Okay? It offers neutral, reliable, and non-question begging processes for judging the merits of claims and counterclaims. Okay. Critical thinking also applies to all of your beliefs at once, your whole worldview all at once. Okay. And the worldview part, um, he talks about here on page 6, a philosophy of life, a set of fundamental ideas that help us make sense of a wide range of important issues in life. Now, your worldview is something that you have, you've collected. Oh, I'm almost out. That you have, that you've collected throughout your life, however many, trips around the sun that is. And it helps us understand ourselves, it helps us understand other people, and it also helps us decide what responses we're going to make. Okay. Now, some people have the wrong idea about critical thinking. Okay. They see the word critical and they think that means fault finding or carping. Okay. So not only are you going to find all the errors, you're also going to tell us about them. Okay. It does not mean that. Okay. Critical in this case means exercising or involving careful judgment or judicious evaluation, determining what we are justified in believing, openness to other points of view, tolerance for opposing perspectives, a focus on the issue at hand instead of what your opponent looks like or talks like, or and fair assessments of arguments and evidence. Okay, that's what this critical means. Now, we all know, we have friends, maybe family members, that are highly critical people. That does not mean that they're using judicious evaluation. They are fault finding. Okay, that's not what we're doing with critical thinking, though. Okay, with critical thinking, we're trying to find the best answer to the scenario or the issue or the question of the day through evaluating things seriously and as objectively as we can manage. Okay. Critical also does not mean you're cold and unemotional. Okay. Critical thinking can also help us clarify our feelings and deal with them more effectively. Now, I know, and this is kind of stereotypical, I am a woman who deals with bipolar depression, and so my emotions are always right there. Okay, so I can't just go with my emotions. I can, but it's not good for me or anybody else. So thinking about, okay, so I'm upset, I'm stressed, I'm anxious. What do I do with that? Critical thinking tells me, take a deep breath, breathe, close your eyes, think for a couple minutes about how calm you can be, and then approach. Okay? It's always a good idea to believe that your emotions are true in that you have them. I am upset. I am anxious. I am confused, whatever. But to use your critical thinking to decide how much of that emotion is necessary or reasonable, okay? It takes a while to learn those things, especially if you have above average issues to deal with. Depression, anxiety, those kinds of things can get in the way of critical thinking. We know this, right? But we can also change our perspective just by calming down, doing what we know we need to do to calm down and put things into perspective, okay? Critical thinking is not the enemy of creativity. It can complement creative thinking because it is needed to assess and enhance the creation. Now, I didn't bring it. I was going to bring a little guy and show you something. I like to sew. I like to read and write and poetry and all that kind of stuff, but I love to sew, and I make quilts and I make all kinds of things, honestly. But if it's needle and thread and fabric, I'm your girl. Sometimes it's just needle and thread and fabric, you know, to poke, like embroidery and such. Most of the time, I have to insert a little bit of critical thinking into my project so that, one, I can finish it, two, I can get it to a point where somebody else can understand what it is. Okay, so sometimes you can be all over the place and then you go, oh, this is for so and so. Okay, she likes these things. Let's do these things. Okay, and it doesn't, critical thinking does not stifle your creativity. It actually enhances it because it gives you a chance to step back and go, oh, I'm missing that one little spot there. So it's all good. I love the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon thing. Comic is what I was going for. He and Hobbes are out looking at the sky. It's beautiful blue day, a couple little decorative flags, decorative clouds, and he says, "Ooh, I think it needs a dot of red over there." And Hobbes is like, "How are you gonna get a dot of red over there?" He goes back, comes out with a kite, flies it up. Yep, that's perfect. It's another set of eyes. It's another set of point of view. So that's helpful. The lack of critical thinking in the past has also left its mark. Okay, the great tragedies of history, the wars, massacres, holocausts, tyrannies, bigotries, epidemics, and witch hunts grew out of famines of the mind where clear, careful thinking was much too scarce. Let's be careful we don't end up there again. Page 8 has a review box for terms under why critical thinking matters on page 8. I love these little review boxes because they give you the main ideas just right there. Okay. So section 1.2, how it works. How does critical thinking work? Well, it works because the common threads of critical thinking make it universal. Okay. Claims are beliefs, are statements. Our statement is an assertion that something is or is not the case. A statement can always be true or false. Okay? And there are lots of sentences that are statements, but there are also a lot of sentences that aren't statements. Anything that's a question, a command, or an exclamation, not statements. Okay? They're not trying to say something that's true or false. They're just giving us information or asking us a question. Okay. When we cannot rationally decide whether a statement is true or false, we should suspend judgment until there is enough evidence to make an intelligent decision, or proportion our belief to the evidence. Okay, if we have this much evidence, we have this much faith that it's right. Okay. In the reasons and arguments section, arguments are the main focus of critical thinking. If somebody's trying to make a claim about something, we have to evaluate how good their reasons are, how much good their reasons are, and kind of go from there. An argument, our last big word, a group of statements in which some of them, the premises, are intended to support another of them, the conclusion. Okay? Inference is another one that's kind of fun. Inference is, remember here, logic is about inference. Inference is the process of reasoning from a premise or premises to a conclusion based on those premises. And I know, well, what else would we base our conclusion on? Lots of things that aren't really premises, just so you know. On pages 12 to 14, there is a critical thinking skills test. We're not going to play with that, mainly because he gives us all the answers in the back, and but if you're interested, go ahead. An explanation tells us how or why something is the case, not trying to prove anything, so it's not an argument. Okay. Indicator words signal that a premise or conclusion is present. But be aware, sometimes there's an argument but no indicator words, and sometimes those same words are used for other meanings. Okay, so they're nice to have, but you won't always get them. Okay, that's on page 15. There's two lists. Most the most common premises indicator words are because, as, since, and for. For a conclusion, therefore, thus, consequently, so, hence, all those kind of things. Okay. Now, the best advice for anyone trying to uncover or dissect an argument is this: find the conclusion first. If you know what claim they're trying to promote, finding the premises is very much easier. Okay. So look for, therefore, thus, that kind of stuff. But also, okay, read the paragraph and go, oh, they're trying to say blah. Okay, so find that conclusion. And then what are they saying to back that up? Why is that true? Okay. Many arguments are surrounded by explanations, reiterations, and asides. Finding the conclusion, which is not always at the end, hear that again. The conclusion in this case is not always at the end. Okay. Finding the conclusion is key to sorting the true premises from the fluff, the real premises from the fluff. Okay. Another discussion board quote that we're going to use, I think with chapter 3 maybe, or with the test, I'm not sure which. Ignorance is an evil weed, which dictators may cultivate among their dupes, but which no democracy can afford among its citizens. Ignorance is an evil weed. Why? Okay, when we think of weeds, I have, well, on our property, I don't go outside much because lupus and all that mess. But anyway, we have a gorgeous raised garden in the back. And the worst thing, weeds. You don't know where they come from. You didn't plant them, but they grow like crazy. They grow better than the stuff you plant, especially when you fertilize and use compost and all that other stuff. Lots of weeds. It's an evil weed. Think poison ivy, for those of us who are allergic especially. So this weed is everywhere. Once you get it in your garden, it's really, really hard to get rid of, okay? Because it can regenerate itself from a little tiny piece of root that you miss, okay? So it's an evil weed. Ignorance, okay? Not knowing stuff is an evil weed, okay? And then it goes on to say, dictators cultivate this among their dupes, among their people, okay? But a democracy, like where we are, we can't afford our citizens to be ignorant. Unfortunately, it's very easy these days to be ignorant because there's so much information out there. Most of us just go, we get frustrated and frozen. There's another review notes box on page 17. So it'll give you some stuff about arguments in the rough and all that. Critical thinking seems to imply that we have prior knowledge of something. Okay, so do we have it? Well, yeah. Aristotle says humans are rational animals, a logical sense that helps you reason in everyday life and enables you to begin honing your critical reasoning. Okay, so we already have that. We're born that way. We're born to ask questions. Any doubt about that? Find a 2-year-old. Even better, find a 4-year-old. Why? 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 Okay. So that's the end of chapter 1. You will have homework from the exercises. Make sure that you're using the right format, having the right things. You get to do a research, not research log. You get to do a reading log that is basically your understanding of the chapter, okay? At least a page of work. It can be in any format you like. Just show me that you know what the chapter is doing, okay? And then the exercises are, in this case, and I think in chapter 2, all at the end of the chapter, right after the summary. So if you're in that table of contents and you go down to chapter 1, go all the way down to the summary. He's very nice. He gives you a little summary of each section. Poke on that, and then after the summary is the exercises. There are other things at the end of the chapter. There's the exercises. There's a set of what they call integrated exercises starting in chapter 2 that takes what we've learned in the previous 2 chapters and gives us questions for it. And then there's writing assignments, there's field exercises, there's a self-assessment quiz. We're not going to do those things. They're there and they're helpful, but yeah. When we get to chapter 3, because our first test comes at the end of the 3rd chapter, because that's the end of the 1st unit on the basics, and it helps for you to practice a little bit. So that's for it. Read chapter 1. I also have a set of PowerPoints up on Blackboard under chapter notes. So course information, scroll down past the major assignment stuff, and then there's chapter notes, and of course the videos are down there too. So let me know if you have questions. You know how to get a hold of me. You have my email.